Have you ever stopped to wonder why, in the grand halls of philosophy, desire was often feared more than death? It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? After all, isn't death the ultimate end, the final unknown? Yet, time and again, philosophers from the East and West pointed their fingers not at mortality, but at desire as the root of suffering, distraction, and downfall. Let's explore this intriguing paradox. Why is craving more terrifying than the end of life itself? In ancient Greece, the Stoics feared the tyranny of desire above all else. They saw desire not as a benign urge, but as a prison that enslaved the soul. Epictetus, once a slave himself, wrote, "Desire is the cause of every sin." He understood that unchecked desire spills over into jealousy, anger, and despair. A desire unfulfilled becomes an internal torment, binding a person to the object of their yearning and fracturing inner peace. To the Stoics, death itself was natural, but unchecked desire was a voluntary exile from tranquility. Plato echoed this in his allegory of the charioteer, soul as a charioteer vying to control two horses, one noble, one unruly. The unruly horse represented desire and emotion. Without rigorous discipline, the charioteer loses control. Without control, the soul is dragged into error, delusion, and disaster. Death, no matter how feared, ends life. Desire, on the other hand, drags us into a perpetual cycle of craving, achievement, loss, and more craving. In Eastern traditions, Buddha declared desire, or tanha, as the root of suffering. Life is impermanent, filled with change and loss. Craving for permanence makes us suffer. Desire binds us to illusions, illusions breed pain, and the cycle continues. The way forward, the path to liberation, begins with renouncing unchecked desire. Enlightenment isn't about escaping death, but escaping the mental prisons we build for ourselves through attachment. But why is this fear of desire so universal across cultures and time? Perhaps because desire is not simply an event, not just a wish, it's a state of unending hunger. It demands and never asks, it drives and never rests. Desire shapes our identity, who we think we are, what we think we need. It makes us fragile. If death breaks the body, desire breaks the soul. In medieval Christian mysticism, saints like Augustine spoke passionately about the inner struggle. He called it the disordered love that pulls the soul away from God toward lesser attachments. The fear wasn't physical death, but the death of the soul, the growth of alienation and spiritual deterioration born from unrestrained desire. Death ends the physical journey. Desire can imprison the soul for lifetimes. The Sufi poets spun this theme into cosmic romance and peril. Rumi wrote about the longing for union with the divine, but he also spoke of the desire for lesser things as chains that dim the light. Desire may begin with love, but it can twist love into obsession or craving. The mystic's journey seeks freedom not from death, but from the cravings that keep the soul wandering in darkness. Let's move to modern philosophy. Nietzsche famously warned that mastery of one's desires was essential for greatness. Without self-mastery, desire directs you rather than you directing it. Become who you are, not become what your desires demand. Desire defines you by what you lack. Death merely places you beyond need. Nietzsche's fear, ultimately, wasn't of mortality, but of a life wasted chasing shadows, losing one's voice. Jean-Jacques Rousseau saw society's cultivated desires, the hunger for status, wealth, and recognition, as worse than any physical tyranny. Self-imposed chains of desire were more insidious than any prison built by kings. People are born free, but they allow themselves to be enslaved by their desires for approval and material gain. Death frees us from suffering. Desire binds us to never-ending longing. So what exactly is it that philosophers feared in desire? It's multifaceted: the loss of freedom, the corruption of the soul, the distortion of values, the fracturing of identity, the perpetuation of suffering. Death, by contrast, is neutral, inevitable, natural, and limited in its domain. Desire, however, is boundless. Unlimited cravings drive endless cycles of dissatisfaction. Consider the psychological perspective. Studies show that hedonic adaptation, returning to a baseline level of happiness after gains, means no amount of possessions or achievements permanently satisfies. This creates an endless treadmill of wanting, acquiring, losing, and wanting again. Desire becomes a self-feeding loop that damages mental well-being. People who chase desires often find themselves emptier, not fuller. Neuroscience reveals how desire hijacks the brain's reward system. Dopamine surges when craving, but diminishes when satiated, prompting more craving. The chasing never ends. This biochemical evidence echoes the ancient warnings. Desire is not a friend. It is a system of addiction that the soul can't outconquer without awareness and discipline. But isn't desire also the engine of creativity, progress, and love? Absolutely. To fear desire is not to annihilate it. Instead, philosophers advocated mastery. Desire becomes fuel when channeled with clarity and purpose. The desire to create art, to heal, to connect, those can elevate us. The difference lies in awareness and direction. So, how did the ancients propose we master desire? The methods are varied. Stoic practices of negative visualization and daily reflection, Buddhist mindfulness to observe desires without attachment, Christian contemplative prayer to reorient the heart, Sufi remembrance to purify yearning, Nietzschean self-overcoming to transform raw energy into expressive greatness. One powerful practice comes from the Stoics. Every morning, imagine loss, wealth, status, loved ones. This doesn't instigate fear, but readiness. It builds gratitude and detachment, curbing desire's grip. It empowers you to live fully, not at its mercy. Buddhist meditation teaches noting. Observe desire as it rises, let it pass without judgment. When desire is met with clear awareness rather than reaction, its power diminishes. Over time, cravings lose their hold. Christian ascetic traditions used fasting, not only from food, but from comforts and distractions, to realign the will. In the silence of denial, the heart remembered its true desire. The divine, Sufi poetry turns desire into worship, purifying it from craving and selfishness. Love becomes the ladder, not the trap. Desire, transformed, becomes devotion, and Nietzsche. He urged the transvaluation of values. Use your desires to go beyond yourself. Transform the vulgar hunger into creative force. A painting born from desire becomes art, not addiction. The common thread is this: death may end the body, but desire binds and blinds the soul, unless it is mastered, redirected, transformed. Philosophers feared not the finality of death, but the lifelong erosion of self that unbridled desire causes. What about you? How often do you chase thoughts, possessions, recognition, relationships, only to find the satisfaction evaporates? Do your desires guide your life, or do you guide them? Can you imagine a life lived not in constant pursuit, but in mindful creation? As you consider these questions, know that desire is not evil, it's energy. But energy without discipline becomes destructive. Philosophers feared that destruction more than death itself, because no life, however long, is worth living if lived as a perpetual servant to unsatisfied longing. In the next section, we'll explore deeper methods of mastering desire, how modern science accords with ancient wisdom, and how you can begin to live as a charioteer of your soul, directing the horses rather than being dragged behind. Stay with me, because mastering desire might be the greatest victory you've never fought. In every moment of life, desire whispers, "If only you had that, you'd be happy." And those whispers grow louder day by day until they shout. But what happens when we surrender to their command, when we stop questioning and start chasing? We plant seeds not of joy, but of perpetual dissatisfaction. The pleasure vanishes as quickly as it arrives, leaving behind a brief high followed by the echo. That echo becomes our master, pulling us toward tomorrow's fix, tomorrow's dream, tomorrow's promise, and we never arrive. The ancient Stoics understood this well. Seneca warned that we become slaves of our desires, no longer free to choose our actions or our peace. To crave without limit is to voluntarily surrender agency. It's no longer life by choice, but life dictated by cravings. They urge daily reflection to ask ourselves, am I living or am I running? And each time desire pulls to pause and ask, who is steering? Me or this urge? The Buddha taught a different path, to see desire as the root of suffering. In the first noble truth, he didn't mince words. Life is suffering until we release our attachment. Desire grips our minds, clings to illusions of permanence, and punishes us with disappointment. Yet, the path is not to annihilate desire, but to see it clearly, to observe its coming and going without identification. Mindfulness becomes the charioteer's rein, guiding desire without being dragged by it. So, how do we begin such mastery in daily life? Start simple. When you crave something, a snack, a scroll, a reply, don't act. Watch it. Feel it rise. Name it. This is desire. Ask yourself, what am I longing for? Control, relief, recognition? The moment you name it, you weaken its grip. The moment you question it, you remember, you have a choice. In the Christian contemplative tradition, desire was seen as love misdirected. St. Teresa of Avila didn't teach repression, but redirection, pointing desire toward what endures. She taught that, when desire is aimed at the divine, it transcends impulse and becomes devotion. Her answer wasn't self-denial but reorientation, from restless craving to sacred longing. So what do your desires reveal about you? What pain are they covering? What calling are they echoing? Often, desire doesn't lie, it just misleads. Beneath it, there's a wound that wants healing, a voice that wants to be heard, a purpose waiting to be born. When you dig deep, you may find that your strongest cravings are just distorted signals of your soul's highest potential. Nietzsche saw this too. He warned, be careful when you fight monsters lest you become one. The danger is not in desire itself, but in letting it rule unexamined. His solution, transmute desire. Don't kill it, elevate it. He said, become who you are. Let your urges fuel your transformation, not your self-destruction. Let the hunger drive you to build, not consume. And today, science confirms what the sages intuited. Modern neuroscience shows how dopamine cravings hijack our brain's reward centers. Social media Fast pleasure, endless noise. They short-circuit patience, numb joy, and create a mind that never rests. Desire, unchecked, doesn't free us. It enslaves us to a cycle of needing more, enjoying less, and losing ourselves along the way. But here's the hope. We can change. Not overnight, not perfectly, but with awareness, with intention, with effort. Say no to small cravings. Build discipline gently. Practice inner spaciousness. And when desire knocks, ask, does this feed my essence or just my ego? Use the Stoic practice of negative visualization. Imagine losing what you take for granted. It'll awaken your gratitude. Practice Buddhist mindfulness. Watch the craving rise and fall without judgment. Let Christian contemplation turn your desire into a longing for higher beauty. Let Sufi mysticism remind you that true ecstasy is not possession, but union with the eternal. We can't eliminate desire, nor should we, but we can reshape it, reclaim it, channel it toward a purpose. Because here's the truth. Your desires are not your enemies, but they're also not your gods. They're guides when questioned. They're fuel when directed. They're fire, but only if you hold the match. So the question remains, are your desires leading you toward your highest self or pulling you away from it? Let me know in the comments. What desire have you recently questioned? And what did it reveal? Or what's one craving you want to transform into something deeper? If this video stirred something in you, if it made you pause, reflect, or breathe differently, then help this message reach others. Leave a like, share it with someone who's always chasing, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because this is just the beginning. Stay mindful. Stay grounded. And remember, you are the one holding the reins.